This is Joe Dancy with the University of Oklahoma. I'm the executive director of the Energy Center at the College of Law.
Of course, we like to check in with Mr. Joe Dancy from time to time about more of some topics rather than the specific Oklahoma shale plays down there, but just to kind of give us your frame of reference, what are your backyard shale plays down there in Oklahoma?
Well, I tell you what, right now, Jason, obviously the Permian Basin is really hot, and we actually had, it's been about 3 or 4 weeks ago, we had 6 speakers come in. We had a week-long executive energy seminar. It's part of our online program, and the students come for a week here in Norman. And what they talked about was some of the discussion was with regard to pricing and what it looks like for next year. And one of the concerns you have, because right now these companies are looking to set their capital expenditures for next year. They're trying to figure out, when to drill, how many rigs to run, and what prices they'll get. And obviously the current prices are a lot weaker than they were here a few months ago. So the consensus was that the drilling activity is not going to be as robust as some people had said or thought 3 or 4 months ago. So the capital expenditures probably be lower, which means a lower rig count. And this is sort of confirmed, like Raymond James and Associates, they do excellent work out of Houston, has lowered their price forecast for the beginning of next year, but they've ramped it up for the end of next year and the following year. And some other Spears and Associates out of Tulsa has also revised their drilling estimates, the rig count, as well as their pricing forecast. And so what they're saying is that, the drilling activity will slow down, and that will mean that supply growth is not going to be anywhere near as robust as they thought it would be. And as you know, Jason, it doesn't matter whether you're in the Bakken, whether you're in the Permian, whether you're in the Eagle Ford, the decline rate on these wells is massive compared to conventional wells. So you stop drilling, and the market's going to balance all that faster. And that's what Raymond James, that's what Spears and Associates, that's what they're all saying, is that that the market's going to balance. And quite frankly, from July on forward of next year, you're going to see prices much healthier than they had forecasted. But the first half of the year, they're going to be weaker because of demand. And of course, there's a concern now about a global recession. And, Lord knows whether we'll have a global, but the bottom line is, Jason, as you know, year after year, regardless of a recession, the demand for crude oil grows. China, India, everybody else, there's no really good substitute for oil. And the good news is it's fungible, so that you can take North Dakota crude oil and you can sell it. You can get it out of North Dakota and actually get it out of the Permian Basin. You can sell your oil in China or Russia or wherever you want to sell your oil, which gives you a global price. And so that was the consensus. The consensus was weaker than expected in the beginning of 2019, but more robust in the later part of the year, and even going further out into 2020. They thought oil prices would be higher than they expected. Both Spears and Associates and Raymond James. And I'm just sort of summarizing these. I'm as a professor, I'm sort of like a canary. I look and I listen to people, and then I write it all down, and then I just repeat it. So it's it makes logical sense.
Yeah, and especially when you start folding in some of the infrastructure projects that are going to come online. I mean, right now, you talk about the Bakken, they can't get any more oil out of there if they tried. There's just a bottleneck in pipelines, and same thing with natural gas. You've got Mexico ready to buy our natural gas, yet we just don't have the infrastructure quite there. So I think 2019. You're exactly right. And I think one of the biggest indicators is going to be as these pipelines get built and as they start coming more and more online, the distribution to the marketplace is going to increase. So I see 2019, much like you said, it might be a little slower in the beginning, but as the months go, I think that the business is going to pick up.
Well, let me bounce this off you. You just brought up a very interesting point with regard to drilling activity and pipelines. A couple of our speakers noted just what you noted, the pipelines out of the Balkan for both natural gas and oil and the Permian are being built out now to handle larger volumes. And generally, it'll be about 12 months from now where everything gets put online. So you're going to be able to transport a lot more volumes. And what they noted, especially in the Permian, there's a whole bunch of wells that have been drilled. They call them, as you know, drilled and uncompleted wells, or DUCs. And the reason you don't complete a well, you don't want to spend the money and complete a well now if it's going to go on in September, because number one, the cost of money, and just from a physical standpoint. So what a couple of these speakers said is, starting maybe in June or July, when they know the pipeline capacity is coming online, they're going to call up their local frac crew and say, gee, send me a couple crews, because I'm going to start fracking and get these wells ready, hooked up and ready to go and they said that's going to be interesting, because over the last 6 months to a year, a lot of these frac companies, because of lack of activity, number one, have not kept up their equipment. Number two, have laid people off. And if you ever go out the Midland, it's not like there's a whole bunch of people, sitting around, wanting to work, regardless of what you're going to pay them. And they said, they're going to get on the phone, and there's going to be a shortage of completion crews. And you sure as heck don't want to spend you want someone who's competent. You don't want to get a bunch of rookies to complete a well that you just spent $5 or $6 million in drilling, and have somebody who is not experienced to go out and mess up the completion, or you take the risk with inexperienced people. And so they had a little chart, and they pointed and said, gee, April or May is the time to look for this frenzy of activity where people are going to want to start completing their DUCs. And he goes, prices will go up, and it'll be, real exciting, because once the frenzy starts, everybody will realize, gee, I need the contract right now for completion, or I'm going to miss the boat. So, and that goes right to your comment of, as they put together more pipelines and get them in operation, it's going to create a real interesting completion frenzy, at the well site.
Well, what I think's interesting is what you just brought up about the workforce potential issues, because that's a huge issue right now in North Dakota. There's like 35,000 jobs open in North Dakota right now, and most of them are energy related. A lot of them are energy related through construction or technology, but the core is energy. And I've asked this question to Lynn Helms, who's the oil and gas.
I know Lynn.
Okay.
He's a great guy.
Yeah.
He has some great jokes.
Yeah, and he's but he's the top regulator in the state of North Dakota. And then I talked to Michelle Comer. She's the North Dakota Labor Commissioner. So two of the top people, and I've asked this question to, and they both agree. And I'd like to get your comments. And this is going to be an interesting cultural change for a lot of people who primarily don't have a lot of change in their life, which is a lot of these jobs you need a little bit of a different education. You don't necessarily need the 4-year degree. You might need something like a 2-year degree, or maybe even a 9-month to a year degree, but you might need a new certification in artificial intelligence, or maybe some computer software, or maybe a new type of welding, whatever it might be. A lot of these jobs that are available, a new type of certification or education is needed. You don't have to go back for 4 years, and some of them train you on the fly and on the job, and some of them will even pay for your education. But what we're finding out is that sometimes old dogs do not necessarily learn new tricks. Now, in North Dakota, if the North Dakotans do not want these jobs, and the Montanans and the Minnesotans and the South Dakotans and those types of things, the nice man from Ghana is going to come here and take that job. And that's what's going on in some places like Williston and other places, is you're getting some of these foreign workers that are coming in either with a green card, or maybe just to outright move over here. And so you're bringing in some cultural change and some diversity change. And that, as you know, sometimes needs to be ironed out in communities. I don't know if you're seeing that down there in your neck of the woods, but up in North Dakota, one of the things that it's being attributed to is these jobs, and that if people from the area don't want them, they're going to search the globe and look for these employees. And Lynn Helms said absolutely. So I don't know if you're seeing that or comment on that, but it changes communities.
Oh, exactly. Actually, one of our speakers owns like 12 or 14 trucks out in Midland. They do some type of service. I can't remember exactly. And he said, 6 of his trucks are parked. He goes, if you go by the Midland airport, you can see them. Because it's not because we don't have the work. He goes, we just don't have the workers. And he told this, I had 34 students, and this is a master's online program in energy law. About 3/4 of them are a third or a half of them are maybe landmen. And he told them, if any of you want to go to Midland, he goes, I will give you a green hat showing that you're a rookie. You can work on one of my trucks. He goes, you'll be at the very low. You'll be sitting in the sun. It'll be 105, but I'll pay you $100,000 a year. And they're all, of course, the students are all stunned. It's like, you're kidding me. And of course, he says, it's not easy work. You're in the sun, and he goes, I will train you, or we will train you to, the guys inside the truck that are capturing all the electronic data, you make substantially more. And he goes, we will train you starting with your green hat and being a rookie, and you can move up and, actually move into, the higher level jobs are more supervisory. And of course, afterwards, a few people went up and, and talked to him, and they were like, a couple were landmen. I said, God, maybe you ought to be sitting on a truck out there doing in Midland, and except it is interesting, and it was and he told me and told them that the market out there, he goes, clearly, and actually he asked the class this, he goes, well, how many of you, if you're in Midland and you get laid off, what do you do? And of course, so they picked on one guy, and the guy goes, let us go home. And of course, the guy he asked was from Midland, and so all his family was there. And he goes, no, I want someone from Midland who, there's not a family there. And of course, everybody, if you get laid off in Midland, you don't stick around because I think it's a fascinating area. But generally, you hop on the freeway and go down to San Antonio, or
Right.
you go over to Dallas, or you come up to Oklahoma City, but you don't stick around in Midland. So he said there's a huge problem, and when this frenzy of completion activity starts, he goes, number one, you aren't going to have the people; they aren't going to be there. The infrastructure, he goes, it's totally at capacity. He goes, you can't have any more trucks going down the road. And he goes, you can't get the people to build the roads because, they're all working in the oil field. They make a heck of a lot more money on a, pipeline or oil service company or whatever than they do, laying asphalt. And so he goes, that's another issue. And it was quite fascinating to hear him talk about the labor issues. And I know Texas Railroad Commissioner Wayne Christian, who's very good friends with Lynn Helms, has told me that, he's actually gone out and done a number of talks here in Texas and told people, gee, if you're having problems getting a job in this economy, you ought to think about, like you just noted, being retrained. There's some 2-year degrees or some companies who will train you and look at the energy sector. And he's doing that partly because, number one, it's a good message to get out there. But number two, for the industry, it's very good. It makes the industry and the regulators look really positive when you have such a positive impact. When you take people who, are working at minimum wage and you put them on a truck and give them a green hat and they're making $100,000 a year. Of course, in Midland, I don't know what it costs to buy a house or an apartment, but I do know the hotel. It's the only place that I got, the hotel that let's say in Dallas would cost maybe $110 a night is $350 a night in Midland. And you go there, and apparently these companies, they rent the entire place out. So a lot of times the parking lot will be full of pickup trucks, and on the weekend you can go and get a room for $100 a night, but during the weekday they're totally sold out, which I thought was pretty interesting. And again, it's all part of the infrastructure, the manpower issue they have out there. It's exciting. Midland is so vibrant. You just go out there and it's like the gold rush, and I enjoy it. I would. I wouldn't hesitate to go out there. If I was young, especially, I tell my students, you got nothing to lose. It doesn't matter whether, you're an engineer or you're a financial person or whether you're a landman or whether you're an attorney. There, if you're willing to work, I think that place is the mecca, and you're going to learn a lot. So you can always go back to Houston, go back to Dallas, go back to Oklahoma City, go back to Tulsa, and you'll be taking those skills with you forever.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is Michelle Comer, the North Dakota Labor Commissioner, and I. This is what we talked about was that 4-year degree just isn't as needed as it was before. In fact, you might argue the 2-year degree is right now where people are going. Now, if you're going to be an attorney or an accountant or a doctor, that's a different story. But if you're just going for a business degree, for example, that today's economy might not be the best way to rack up $100,000 in debt and go out there and try to look for a job with 100 other people versus you get a 2-year degree that might be paid for and you make $100,000 a year right out of school. I mean, and that wasn't the case 10 years ago. That wasn't the case 20 years ago. So the thing that she said is that we need to start changing a 40-year mindset of you got to go to a 4-year school right when you're done, that type of thing, to where there's options like there's never been before. You work for a university, University of Oklahoma, and you're part of the law program, which is 8 years of school. Is the increase of trades and that sort of thing, is that trickling into your guys' conference rooms and that sort of thing, just from an educational observation side?
Yeah, it is. Let me tell you how this is working. You have to have a 4-year undergraduate degree, but what we've done at the law school, and there's some other universities, for example, University of Tulsa has done a great job. Oklahoma City University has a similar type program where online, if you have a 4-year degree, you can get a master's in energy studies or energy legal studies. Each university calls it a little bit different. But what it is, Jason, is like, you get a 4-year degree, say, in political science and can't find a job or can't find a good job. So you can go and take, a 15-month program or 20-month program and get a master's in energy law. And they'll teach you, or we teach students, all about oil and gas leasing, running title, environmental law, water law, energy project finance, negotiations, federal leasing, offshore leasing. You take all these courses, and the neat thing online, and of course, this really dates me because I've been teaching now for over 35 years at a whole bunch of different law schools and business schools, and it's always FaceTime, and if you're a good professor, the students will pack your classes, and and with the online programs now, what you can do, and what we've done at the University of Oklahoma, is we've cherry-picked some of the very best teachers and experts in their given area, like title, like energy project finance, like environmental law, and then we record their lectures, and then the students get the experience of having a superstar. And some of these people, I mean, we had the latest people that were in here, we had about 34 of them. I think we had 3 or 4 from Midland, and one guy told me, he goes, at lunch, I just pull my pickup truck over, and while I'm eating lunch, I turn on the computer and I watch my 30-minute lecture and take my notes. And he goes, then that night, he goes, I get back online, read everything, and then, go through the protocol of responding and doing the homework and doing all the assignments and et cetera. But he goes, it's great because, number one, you're still working, so you are enhancing your education without going back to school and quitting your job. And that's the interesting thing is, of all these people who graduate from our online program, every time 2 or 3 people come up to me and say, God, this is so interesting. I want to be a lawyer. I think I go into law school, and I tell them, hey, look, think about this. You're going to spend, as you know, Jason, you're going to spend 3 years, probably more, going to law school. It's going to cost you a bunch of money, and you're going to quit a job that you're making some really good money and getting some good experience. You could do that in some areas, like in Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City University has a night program. In Houston, there are night programs for law school. But if you're in Midland, if you go to law school, you're going to have to relocate, and the online law degree has not is not there yet. It may be here in 4 or 5 years where you can, in Midland, Texas, take a 3-year program online and complete it successfully. But it's real exciting. The whole online education, I was very skeptical about it when I first started and getting involved 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. But the more I'm involved, the more comfortable I am. As you know, the technology is just incredible. The Skyping and the ability to get online. It really, and like the commissioner noted, I mean, even taking seminars and lectures online without getting an advanced degree is can make you competent. I mean, the joke is in Midland, my law students don't appreciate this joke sometimes. I said, gee, if you fail the bar exam, but if you can pass a drug test, you can go to Midland and make more than $100,000, driving a truck. And of course, they all think I'm joking. I said, well, no, I'm serious. There is such a, it's probably substantially more than 100,000 from what I've read and what I've heard. But it is, that is a, well, so it's not as easy as it seems, because I mean, the roads out there, I mean, it's, if you ever, I don't know if you've been to Midland lately, but I was out there and everybody drives a pickup truck or a huge trailer, and I mean it is somewhat intimidating for someone like me who's used to Oklahoma City or Norman, Oklahoma traffic or Dallas traffic, where you may have a traffic jam, but it's mostly cars and SUVs. It's not 18-wheelers that are going 75 miles an hour. So
I always tell people, if when these oil things are going on, if you got no business being on the roads, don't go.
Right.
It's just it ain't worth it. It's just not worth it, because you're talking, like you said, these aren't little Geo Metros. These are big trucks, and if you get hit, there's more fatalities than injuries, type of a thing. That's how big these trucks are. The education part, it is pretty neat and exciting to see the different options that are coming. To the different ways that you can do and get an education these days. I chuckled because an ex-girlfriend of mine, actually, she was an attorney, and she was working for a law firm and a judge for about, I suppose, 2, maybe 3 years tops. And then after that, she started selling pharmaceuticals because she made double the money. And so,
right.
That's what made me think of it. I wonder how many lawyers are doing the same thing. Like, no way, man, I'll go drive truck and make $120,000 a year.
Well, it's funny, and actually, it's funny you mentioned that, because I told my students, regardless of where you are in your class, if you have a 4-year or 2-year degree or a law degree, you generally have enough intelligence to do something really well. So you just need to find out what you enjoy doing, and it may be driving a truck in the Bakken or because you're making money, or you enjoy driving a truck, but you have intelligence, and if you're usually going to school and get a 2.4 or a law degree, you have some type of discipline where you have to do your homework, you have to show up for class, you have average to above average intelligence, so you can be successful selling cosmetics, like or doing whatever you want to do. And there's quite a few very, very successful people with law degrees that there's no way you could get them back law practice, and there's no way you can get them near a courtroom. So I think that's good.
Yeah,
quite frankly.
And a lot of times when I talk to students, I tell them in some way it comes up that if you're in business, well, during a recession, you just got to figure out a way to make a better steak sandwich than the other guy, because there's always going to be money out there, but it just becomes a lot harder to find. But if you make a better product than the next person, you should be okay. Or if you're going to go and get a trade, say like I always give the example of a hairstylist. Hair always grows during a recession, and actually it's one of the few industries that is recession proof, is cutting hair. And so, I mean, if you're looking to, have a safe industry, something like that is really safe, because like I said, hair still grows in a recession and people still need to, get their hair cut. So when you hear the word recession, a lot of times people think everybody gets hit, when that's not the case. In fact, some people, like I know my business actually grew during the last recession because one of the things that we are set up for is to deliver content to traditional media formats. And when they're laying people off, they love us because
Right.
we're providing, but to be fair to us, we don't, sensationalize our topics, and we don't have an agenda. Our agenda is pretty simple: educate the world about oil and gas. That's pretty simple. And so, hey, speaking of your students, by the way, and educating the world of oil and gas, as we kind of wrap up here, take an opportunity to plug the new podcast that you guys have been working on, that sort of thing. It's another voice for energy and another opportunity for students to learn about it.
Actually, Jason, we this was a student idea, and I talked to you earlier, and I wanted to make sure we're not, the students were not in competition with you. But about 6 months ago, they came to my office. I said, "Hey, Professor Dancy, we know you're busy as heck, but we'd like to do this energy podcast. Would you be faculty advisor? No one else will be faculty advisor." And I said, "Sure." But I let them. They messed around, and they said, "Well," and I said, "Geez, guys, first of all, you need the recording equipment, you need the software." So it took them about 3 months to get everything together. But what we did is we put together a podcast. It's the Oklahoma Energy Podcast, and we interviewed one of our recent graduates. Kimberly works with Ball, Morse and Lowe, and a firm here in Oklahoma City, and she's an expert on water law, and she talked about water issues mainly in the Permian, because she's a Midland girl who's been transplanted to Oklahoma City and Norman. But she said, and her father practices law out in Midland, but she goes, water is such a important aspect of oil and gas development that people don't realize, and it's going to be a continual issue going forward. Then we had another, Dan Steffens, who's Energy Perspectives Group CEO. He's a energy expert, talked about natural gas. And I know you had a recent program on natural gas, and I'd listened. And what Dan said was just what your guest was saying, and you brought up, God, it's been 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think. You were ahead of the curve in a way about the fact that this winter we have such low levels of natural gas that potentially in Chicago and elsewhere and back east, that there may actually be shortages where utilities are going to have to go to manufacturers and chemical plants and buy the natural gas at whatever price they'll have to pay. And he goes, it could be, Dan used to work for Hess Corporation. He said at one point, and this is 10 or 15 years ago, we had people buying our gas from Hess at like $60 a thousand cubic feet. And to give you in perspective, today, the gas is $3.70 a thousand cubic feet. That's up from $3. So he goes, they pay whatever it takes, because you cannot let the residential users, you can't let the lines go below a certain pressure, because it's a safety hazard. It'll blow. We had this issue, and we had the reverse issue in Boston where the valve failed and it had overpressure and caused a whole bunch of fires. But in any event, our podcast is the Oklahoma Energy Podcast. I talked to the students. They love to interview you, especially about the Bakken. We're going to go down to Napier in February and broadcast from the energy expedition down there. And they would love to talk to you about the Bakken and what's going on up there. But it is interesting because I've talked to them, and that's another place. I said, God, if you guys want a career, and of course one of our online students was from North Dakota. I think Wartburg was the name of the town. But anyway, the law students, I said, you can go to North Dakota. That would be a pretty good place to practice too. And then they look at your average temperature in January, and it's like, Professor Dancy, we're a Okie, we can't take these 7-degree temperatures, average in January. But I guess Jason, you got to get used to it. I don't know if I could take it anymore either, and I'm from Michigan, so.
It's tough. It is tough. Michigan, at least you got some trees, that sort of thing. Oh, you mentioned Midland, and that, we've got Williston and Watford City, and those are like land islands. They're just, in the middle of nowhere, and you've got some, and to be, not to, be negative or anything like that, but it's a very tough place to live. You're hours and hours away from a city of any size to go see a concert, for example, or something like that. A lot like Texas. Texas is a big state. You got to drive, some hours to get from point A to point B sometimes, and that's one of the issues. That's one of the issues in North Dakota is trying to overcome some of those temperature realities because like Liberty Oil, for example. I don't know if they're still doing this, but 2-3 years ago, they had their frack crews down in San Antonio, but they were fracking up in North Dakota. I mean, can you imagine?
Right.
Can you imagine? You're going to you're working in San Antonio, but all the artificial intelligence and all the robots are doing the work up in North Dakota for you, so you don't have to deal with it. It's a very small crew because there's always got to be some people on the well site putting the pipes on and that sort of thing. But a lot of those guys that do a lot of the computer work and the joystick work no longer need to be on site anymore. So they can be down in Houston or San Antonio or whatever the heck. So it's a changing world out there. And North Dakota, what they're trying to do is quality of living, so they can have some better shops and some, entertainment things to do because that's where we're going now. You can have any product delivered to your house by Amazon. And so that, shopping isn't really the big deal. You need to have some entertainment and some quality of life things for families to do and for people to experience if they don't have, mountains and rivers and lakes and, the type of natural resources that originally brought people to cities. So anyway, it's just interesting, and good luck to the students on this. I'm sure they're going to find out, like a lot of people are. Podcasts are easy to set up, but to get one going for a while is a little bit of work. You got to know what you're doing. You got to have good guests.
Right.
It sounds like if you guys are going to be talking about some niche subjects like water issue, that sort of thing, they're on the right track. I mean, you want to talk about one of the most underreported, yet one of the most critical topics of the energy industry. It's water, without a doubt. Without a doubt. I mean, when you're talking about ways that you can recycle water and purify water, I mean, you could do a month on that. And then when you start talking about, oh my God, we're going to need 20 times more than we originally thought, where are we going to get it? Well, no one wants to talk about that.
No. Actually, I rode around, got to spend 6 months or 8 months ago in Midland with a company I won't name, and all I heard out of their mouth was, where are we going to get the water? Where are we going to get the water? And et cetera. I'm sure it's the same in North Dakota. In fact, Watford City was the one where one of our students is from, and I think she has 3 or 4 or maybe 5 kids, and so your description of Watford City is just about like hers, so it was very interesting. But she was a very bright student and was happy she graduated last week, so that was excellent.
Yeah, I mean, like Fargo, for example, is where North Dakota State is, where the university is. It's the biggest town in North Dakota. That's like 7 hours from Williston, like 6 hours from Watford. So just to, drive and go to your college football game, that's quite a bit. That's a long drive. And to get to the state capitol, it's like 3-4 hours, something like that. And a lot of it depends on the traffic too, because a lot of these roads, they're not conducive for a lot of travel. A lot of these roads, we're just used to having a few combines a year on there, and now they've got energy trucks going, and so you can't pass as easy. And you know what I mean by that? I'm sure Midland's the same way, where you start getting on some of these roads and you are just beholden to the flow of traffic. If it's going 20 miles, you're going 20 miles an hour. If it's going 75, well, you're going 75 because the big trucks dictate the road.
Well, let me ask you a question. How many times has your windshield been cracked by the big trucks throwing up rocks? In Midland, I was just shocked at how many times I was like, oh my gosh, luckily it didn't crack my windshield, but God, I must have been hit like 3 times in a 3-day period by, boy, it's startling. You're not used to that in Oklahoma City or Dallas, having a rock thrown at your windshield.
Well, it's pretty common up here. I mean, I bet it's happened to me twice in the last probably 4, 5, 6 years. Just thinking about it, because it depends on the community, but they'll put sand and salt and that stuff down on the roads. So it's not uncommon to get all kinds of different rocks amongst the roads and get kicked at you because they use it for traction on the roads.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, and you can bring in some other stuff. So yeah, it gets a little bit Yeah, I mean, there's the windshield guys are doing really well in North Dakota. They do just fine.
Hey, that is another. Actually, my wife had a windshield replaced here 2 or 3 years ago, and the guy who it was actually had a franchise, and I thought that's a pretty neat little franchise. And you call up, and your insurance company, they come right to your house and they replace it sitting in the driveway, and you have to go to a shop somewhere in South Dallas or South Oklahoma City, and yeah, you're right. God, that would be a gold mine in Midland or up in North Dakota. You would think in any of the cities. So
Yeah,
exciting.
and any time that you can get somebody just to pay a small deductible and insurance will pick up the rest, you got a good business. You got a really good
Exactly.
business, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's a good point.
All right. Well, I appreciate the time today. Any final thoughts? Anything we missed? Anything you want to reiterate or anything like that?
No, actually, I think I appreciate everybody who has listened to your program and listened to my lectures and et cetera. And I do think 2019, it's going to start slow, but I really do think as we go forward, it's going to pick up steam, and it should be a good year. Good year for companies, good year for mineral owners, good years for workers, good for everybody, including the government who gets their fair share.